My wife demanded, "Sell your startup. My brother needs $1 million for his business." I replied, "Let me call my lawyer." Then I restructured the company into a trust she couldn't touch and handed her brother a $100 bill as my investment. I'm 37, a software engineer turned founder. 3 years ago, I launched a small SaaS startup with two friends. We bootstrapped the hell out of it, living on ramen and code until we got our first big client. Then another, then another. Last year, we hit a milestone, seven-figure revenue. No investors, no debt, just slow, sustainable growth. It was everything I'd worked for, and I thought I'd built it all for us. My wife, Lena, and me. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. She'd been with me through the long nights, the burnout, the uncertainty. She liked to remind me she held things down while I worked. And to be fair, she did, at first. But as the money started coming in, her tone changed. So did her priorities. It started small. Sudden interest in designer things. Business class only for flights. Little digs about how weird it is that a tech CEO still drives a 2015 Toyota. I didn't mind. Success changes lifestyle, I get that. But the first real crack showed up when her brother, Travis, reappeared. Travis is the kind of guy who's always on the verge of something big. Crypto 1 year. Real estate consulting the next. He's never actually held down a real job longer than 6 months, but he's always talking like a man about to close a deal worth millions. I'd always been polite to him, kept my distance. Until one evening, during dinner, Lena dropped the bomb. Travis has this amazing business opportunity. He just needs a little startup capital. I put my fork down. How much are we talking about? She smiled, like she was easing into it. He says around $1 million to get things off the ground. I thought she was joking. When I realized she wasn't, I laughed. Out loud. $1 million? For Travis? Her expression hardened instantly. He's your family too, you know. He's your family, I corrected. And no, I'm not giving him $1 million to burn on another scam. She crossed her arms. You owe him that. You wouldn't be where you are without my support. I helped you build that company. That one hit wrong. You didn't build the company, Lena. You were supportive, yes, but you weren't part of the business. She snapped. If it weren't for me keeping things together, you wouldn't even have had time to focus on it. That's not equity, I said calmly. That's marriage. Her face changed. Cold. Calculated. And then she said something I'll never forget. Then maybe I'll make sure your company becomes our company. If you don't want to share, the court system will make you. That's when I stopped arguing. Just looked at her for a long moment and said, "You know what, Lena? You're right. I should probably call my lawyer." She smirked, thinking I was bluffing. You do that. So I did. The next morning, I called Maya, my corporate attorney, sharp as glass, discreet, and one of the few people I absolutely trust. I explained everything. The marriage, the threat, the brother, the talk of our company. She didn't sound surprised. You're not the first client who's had to build a legal firewall inside their own marriage, she said dryly. We spent the next 3 weeks restructuring everything. By the time we were done, the company was no longer personally mine. It was owned by a trust, managed by a board, which included my partners, with me as a salaried executive. My ownership? Technically now in the trust's control, protected by airtight clauses. If anyone, spouse or otherwise, tried to claim marital rights to it, they'd run straight into a wall of paperwork thicker than the IRS codebook. 2 days after everything was finalized, Lena called me during lunch. Travis is coming over tonight to talk about the investment. Try to be open-minded, okay? Sure, I said. I'll be here. And I was. That evening, Travis swaggered into my house wearing a gold chain and fake confidence. He had an executive summary printed on glossy paper, full of buzzwords and stock photos. He slid it across the table. We're looking at a huge opportunity, bro. AI, e-commerce, logistics, all integrated. I skimmed the first page. The company name was misspelled. Twice. He leaned back and grinned. So you in? Lena was watching me, expectantly. I nodded slowly. Sure. Let me grab something. I went to my office. Came back with an envelope. Slid it across the table. Travis opened it. Inside, a $100 bill. He frowned. What's this? My contribution, I said. Should be enough to start your business. Maybe get some office supplies. Lena's face went pale. Ethan, what the hell is this? You wanted me to invest, I said. This is the extent of what I can give without breaching the new company trust structure. It's all protected now. Everything. So unless you two plan to start a lemonade stand, that's the last dollar you'll ever get from me. Silence. Pure, glorious silence. Travis muttered something under his breath, grabbed the envelope, and stormed out. Lena stayed frozen. What did you do? I made sure no one can take what I built because of a threat over dinner. She started to cry, not out of guilt, but out of anger. You went behind my back. You made me need to. That night, I moved out. Not because I had to, but because I was done defending my sanity. I took nothing but my laptop and a suitcase. The next morning, my lawyer filed for legal separation. Lena found out when the papers arrived 2 days later. Her text was short. You're unbelievable. My reply? No. I'm just done being your bank. I didn't hear from Lena for a week after the $100 incident. Then, one afternoon, a mutual friend texted me. Hey man, just a heads up, she's been saying she's going to take you for everything. I just replied, she can try. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at my office. From her lawyer, petition for divorce, claiming entitlement to half of the company as marital property, citing her material and emotional support throughout its creation. Maya, my lawyer, read it and chuckled. Classic. She's using the sweat equity of the spouse argument. Pretty standard, but we're way ahead. We went through the paperwork carefully. Maya had already structured everything months in advance. The company, its assets, and intellectual property were no longer in my name. They were held by a private trust, managed by a board. Technically, I didn't even own the thing anymore. She can try to subpoena records, Maya said, but all she'll find is your salary, which, by the way, we set intentionally low. Exactly, I said. I'm just an employee. A very clever, underpaid one, she smiled. Meanwhile, Lena was posting quotes on Instagram. Stuff like, never underestimate a woman who knows her worth, and if they won't give it to you, take it. Her brother, Travis, started subtweeting me too. Some people forget who supported them when they were nobodies. Cute. I didn't respond. Silence is hard to argue with. 2 weeks later, her attorney scheduled a mediation. We sat in the same conference room. Me, Maya, Lena, and her lawyer, some guy named Ron, who looked like he charged $700 an hour to rehearse indignation. Ron started with his practiced tone. Mrs. Carter made significant personal sacrifices to support your client's professional growth. She is therefore entitled to equitable distribution of assets derived during the marriage, including his company. Maya smiled politely. We understand. However, Mr. Carter's company is not a marital asset. It is a trust, legally established prior to any petition and not subject to equitable distribution. We can provide documentation from the state registrar confirming this. Ron blinked. A trust? Yes, she said. With a board of trustees and independent beneficiaries. Your client has no legal claim to it. He stammered. But he founded it during the marriage and legally reassigned ownership before your client made any claim, Maya said smoothly. In fact, the trust was formed immediately following your client's statement that she intended to use the court to obtain half of it. The silence that followed was glorious. Lena looked like she'd been slapped. Her lawyer glanced at her, clearly realizing she'd never mentioned that detail. Maya slid a copy of the trust formation date across the table. You'll notice the timing, she said pleasantly. All properly filed. All transparent. Nothing hidden. Just protected. Ron's jaw tightened. Then we'll pursue spousal support. Of course, Maya said. We're reasonable people. Let's discuss that. They expected some big payout. Instead, Maya presented a detailed financial statement. My official salary, expenses, standard of living, and a proposed settlement that was modest but fair and legally airtight. He's offering full closure, Maya said. A clean break. No future claims. Ron turned to Lena, whispering urgently. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, her voice cracked. You moved everything because of me? I looked straight at her. No, Lena, because you told me exactly what you were going to do. They ended the meeting early. No yelling, no tears, at least not in front of us. But when I walked out of that building, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. It wasn't joy. It was the relief that comes from finally being done playing defense. A few weeks later, I got a call from Margaret, her mother. We'd always gotten along. She's the kind of person who sees straight through people's performances. I heard what happened, she said quietly. Yeah, I said. It's been a ride. She's embarrassed, Margaret said. She knows she crossed a line. I'm not angry, I told her. Just done. She sighed. She'll learn, eventually. But not with you. The divorce was finalized in late March. No spousal support. No claims on the company. She kept her car and the condo furniture. I kept my sanity and the trust. Travis apparently pivoted to a new business idea, coaching people on entrepreneurial mindset. The irony isn't lost on me. About a month after everything settled, Lena texted me. Just one line. You could have just said no. I stared at it for a long moment before replying. I did. You just didn't believe me until a lawyer said it too. No response after that. And I never heard from her again. Update 1 that it's been a year and 4 months since the divorce was finalized. If you told me back then that I'd ever feel grateful for how things unfolded, I would have laughed. But life has a way of turning wreckage into structure if you stop trying to rebuild what wasn't stable to begin with. The company's doing better than ever. We hit 8 figures in revenue this quarter. The trust structure that once felt like a legal necessity now feels like the smartest business move I ever made. It protects the company from lawsuits, taxes, and, well, emotional sabotage. The irony? The same mechanism that saved it from my marriage is what made it thrive afterward. Maya, my lawyer, likes to joke that I should put trust issues on my business card. My life's simpler now. I moved into a small house near the lake, just far enough from the city that I can hear myself think. I still work long hours, but they're on my terms now. No passive-aggressive guilt trips, no emotional accounting. Sundays used to be our couple brunch days. Now they're quiet mornings with coffee and a notebook where I map ideas instead of arguments. I've also been dating someone new, Erin, an accountant who runs her own small firm. We met through work. She's calm, direct, allergic to drama. When she says she'll call, she calls. When she's angry, she says so. It's peaceful, for the first time in years. I don't feel like I'm performing for approval. Then, last week, I got a text that felt like déjà vu. From Travis. Hey man, long time. Need to talk. It's important. My first thought, what could he possibly want now? I ignored it. 2 days later, another text came in. Bro, I'm in a really bad spot. Can we meet? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Curiosity, mostly. We met at a diner. Same one where I used to take Lena when things were still good. Travis looked older. Not in the wise way. In the burned out, running from consequences way. He'd clearly been drinking, but not enough to be incoherent. Thanks for coming, he said, eyes darting everywhere but at me. What's going on, Travis? He sighed. I screwed up, man. Got involved with this crypto thing. Thought it'd hit big. Lost everything. My investors are threatening to sue. I said nothing. Just sipped my coffee. I know we've had our differences, he continued, but you've always been good with business. Maybe you could help me get back on my feet. You mean give you money? I asked flatly. He winced. A loan, just to cover legal stuff. I'll pay you back. You've got that company, man. I know you can afford it. For a moment, I just looked at him. It was surreal, the same entitled tone, the same expectation that my success existed to solve his mistakes. But this time, I wasn't angry. I was detached. Travis, I said, I don't think you understand something. My company isn't mine anymore. It's owned by a trust. Legally, I couldn't give you a cent from it even if I wanted to. He frowned. Come on, man, there's always a way. There is, I said. It's called getting a job. He went quiet. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a $100 bill, and placed it on the table. Same as before. This worked out great last time, I said dryly. History repeats, I guess. He stared at it for a second, then at me, then pushed it back. Keep it, he muttered. You don't have to be an asshole. You're right, I said, standing. I don't. But I also don't have to be your ATM. As I was leaving, he called after me. You'll regret this, man. I didn't even turn around. Just said over my shoulder. Already learned that lesson once. Didn't take. That night, I got an email from Margaret, Lena's mom. Still the one person from that family I respect. He's made a mess of his life, she wrote. I'm sorry he dragged you back into it. Lena's doing better, for what it's worth. I think she's finally learned what you meant when you said boundaries aren't punishment. I replied, tell her I'm glad she's okay. Tell Travis I hope he learns too. She wrote back one line. You already taught them both. just not the way they expected. The next morning, I went to the shop, stood in the sunlight, and realized something strange. I wasn't angry. Not at them, not at the past, not even at myself. All the safeguards, the legal maneuvers, the trust documents, they weren't about protecting money anymore. They were about protecting peace. And that's the best kind of dividend you can earn. Final update that it's been 3 years since the day my wife demanded that I sell my startup for her brother's $1 million business idea. 3 years since I made one phone call that changed everything, not just legally, but emotionally. I didn't think it then, but that call to my lawyer was also the first real act of self-respect I'd made in years. The company's grown beyond anything I imagined. We were acquired 6 months ago by a larger tech group. The trust, the one everyone mocked me for creating, was the reason the deal went through so smoothly. Every partner, every employee, every early investor got their fair cut. I stayed on as a consultant, mostly to guide the transition. But for the first time in a decade, I don't need to work. I still do, but now because I want to. I moved out of the city, bought a quiet place in Colorado. My mornings are all coffee, cold air, and sunlight that hits the mountains like a slow exhale. There's peace here, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's decisions. I live with Erin now. We didn't rush things. She's steady, practical, grounded, someone who knows how to manage her own life. Sometimes she jokes that I overthink everything. Maybe she's right. But when she says it, it's with warmth, not contempt. We split bills. We share decisions. It's not a transaction, it's a partnership. The kind I used to think I had, until I learned that love without respect is just negotiation disguised as affection. A few months ago, I got another email from Margaret, my ex-mother-in-law. Subject line: "You probably won't respond, but I wanted to tell you this." Inside, Travis was charged with fraud. It's not a big case, but he finally hit the wall he's been running toward for years. Lena's been working full-time at a nonprofit. She said to tell you that she's sorry. Not in a take-me-back way, just sorry. She said you were right. You can't fix people who refuse to hold a wrench themselves. I read it twice, then closed the laptop. Didn't reply. Didn't need to. It was closure written in plain text. The next day, I was at the shop one last time, cleaning up the space I used to call my second home. Luke, the kid I'd mentored, is now running it. He's good, better than I was at that age. He has a wife and a baby on the way. He calls me boss, but I keep reminding him, "You're the boss now. Don't forget that." When I locked the door for the last time, I didn't feel loss, just pride and relief. People talk about closure like it's this cinematic moment. Tears, forgiveness, maybe a drink shared in understanding. But that's not how it works. Closure is when the noise finally stops echoing. When someone's name shows up on your phone and you don't feel your chest tighten. When you can remember what happened and not rewrite it in your head to make sense of it. When silence feels like a full sentence, not a pause. That's what I have now. So if you're reading this because you've been betrayed, manipulated, or blindsided, here's what I'll tell you. You don't have to win. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to stop letting them define what right looks like. Because the quietest revenge isn't success. It's peace that no one else has the password to. Last week, I sat on my porch as the sun went down. Erin brought out 2 mugs of coffee. She leaned against me and asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't made that call?" I smiled. Sometimes. Then I remember that every good thing in my life started right after I stopped explaining myself. She laughed softly. "That's a very CEO thing to say." "Maybe," I said. "But this time, I'm the CEO of my own peace."